We're going to start off first with a presentation. James Summerson with the Department of Energy is going to give you an overview of the Programmatic EIS that's being prepared for Hawai'i Clean Energy Initiative. We will then, in response to last time we were here about, well, actually we weren't here on Hawaii Island, but about a year and a half ago, we did the Hawaii Interisland Renewable Energy Program, WIN, HIREP. We did some public scoping meetings at that time. And in response to those meetings, we had a lot of community people expressing frustration with the process, which essentially was people were here at the table and we took their comments, but there really was not an opportunity to ask any questions. So tonight, in response to that, we have set aside some time for questions and answers. But the questions and answers should really only be about the Programmatic EIS process, or any comment or any question you may have about the presentation. Because the real crux of tonight's meeting is going to be permitting you an opportunity to provide official public comments that will be part of the record for this project that will be considered when the Department of Energy drafts its Programmatic EIS. So, with that being said, I wanted to just cover some logistics, meeting facility logistics, bathrooms, Wahini's at the far corner, Wahini's in the middle, Kane at the far corner. There's a sign-in sheet. There are 3 different sign-in sheets. One is two sign-in sheets. One is for information. If you want to receive a copy of the draft EIS or you want updates, please sign in there with your information, your contact information. And the second is if you want to provide a comment tonight. To facilitate that is obviously we've got a lot of people here who want to share a comment or at least be informed. So to facilitate that, if you could sign up, and we're going to take people in the order upon which they've signed up. There's some water, light refreshments in the back. And I want to apologize in advance. We have this facility until 9 o'clock. And I'm sure a lot of you are thinking that's really not going to be enough time. And 2 things. We're going to try to move this meeting along as quickly as possible to permit everybody an opportunity to provide a comment. I want you also to know that there are numerous methods or ways to make a comment. You can make a comment tonight. If anybody, the court reporter is in the back of the room, and she can take your comment even now during the presentation. You can fax in your comment. You can email your comment on the website. I would urge you to take one of the comment forms in the back, or you can mail it. So we're going to try very hard to get everybody's comment in tonight. Therefore, I am really going to have to ask you for your permission to move this meeting along, which means that I'm going to try to limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. And I'm going to have to enforce that. The questions that after the presentation are not part of the formal record, so I also want to assure you, if you're asking a comment that needs to be considered, the panelists are going to let you know, great comment. Please make sure you put it on the record at the next half. So we're going to try to move this along by making sure that the questions are really questions about the process. And enough talking by me. Let me let James Summerson come up and give you an overview of the Programmatic EIS.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you all very, very much for taking time out of your busy schedules to come here tonight. Our federal meeting process requires public involvement. That's one of the major benefits to it, and the quality of what we end up with is very much dependent on the input that we get from the communities we go to. So thank you very much for your willingness to share with us tonight. Don just basically went through the agenda, but I'd like to introduce the other formal representatives who are here tonight. Jim Spade is also from the Department of Energy, and he's actually duty stationed in Hawaii and full-time supports the state of Hawaii in its clean energy activities. Tomei is with the State of Hawai'i DBET, and Mark Eckenrode is with the Department of Interior Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. So I'll give the presentation, we'll have questions and answers, a very short break, and then the formal comments. Our vision of what we're trying to accomplish in this process is to look at a broad range of energy efficiency activities and technologies. Not trip over. James, don't trip over the okay. We want to evaluate potential environmental impacts of all of these activities and technologies. We want to identify possible mitigation actions or best management practices that could lessen these potential impacts. And we need to incorporate community input, public input, regarding each of these activities or technologies, regarding mitigation, regarding all aspects of this process. This process is an opportunity to inform decision makers, to get your input on the record so that decision makers are aware of how you feel as individuals and communities before they make a decision, not afterwards. Basically, it's an informational resource. Good job. Thank you. Why a Hawai'i Clean Energy PEIS? The state of Hawaii, despite being the third smallest user of energy in the United States, is the most petroleum-dependent state. Petroleum is used here for both electricity and for transportation. You don't need me to tell you you have the highest energy rates as states go in the United States. This makes energy a problem or a challenge in the state economically, environmentally, in terms of security, and in terms of sustainability. Back in January of 2008, the Federal Department of Energy and the State of Hawaii entered a partnership to try to address together the challenges of energy in this state. They signed a Memorandum of Understanding to acknowledge this partnership. Out of this was developed the Hawai'i Clean Energy Initiative, which has a goal of 70% clean energy by 2030, a very ambitious goal. In addition, the Department of Energy, for some years now, has invested a great deal of money in activities to support energy in the state of Hawaii. We have funded research and technology. We fund staff involvement, for instance, Jim Spade, and we've had other people over the years. We funded individual projects such as electric vehicle recharging stations, a wind farm, photovoltaic panels, this type of thing. We have every reason to believe that we will continue with these activities and others in the future. Therefore, it seemed reasonable to look at and study all of these activities as an integrated whole. Additionally, the state of Hawaii, well before this MOU was signed and continuing through this time, has been doing its own plan and development work to deal with the energy issues. And I'm going to ask Maria Tomei to speak to you a little bit on more details of the state of Hawaii's activities.
Thank you, Jane. And thank you all for being here tonight. I'm Maria Tomei with Hawaii State Energy Office, and I'm just going to take a few moments to put this programmatic analysis and the Hawai'i Clean Energy Initiative in the context of Hawaii's energy policies and programs. Our energy policies have been in place for many years, yes, even before the HCEI. Since 1974, the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism has had the responsibility of being Hawaii's Energy Resources Coordinator and has been the lead on activities to support Hawaii's energy objectives. Since 1978, one of those objectives has included energy self-sufficiency. We have led the development of state functional plans, energy strategy projects, workshops, conferences, and many, many studies of Hawaii's resources and potential. In 2008, the Hawai'i Clean Energy Initiative, Memorandum of Understanding with the U.S. Department of Energy, brought new resources, focus, and analysis to the question: if we bring together political will, knowledge from Hawaii's energy community, technical experts, and analytical capabilities from the U.S. Department of Energy and national laboratories, could Hawaii actually achieve 70% clean energy by 2030? The analysis indicated that yes, 70% could be done, although it may not be easy. In 2010, a Hawai'i Clean Energy Initiative program was established in state law, HRS 196-10.5. And I'd like to clarify here that the energy agreement signed in October of 2008 by Hawaii Electric, Hawaii agencies, and witnesses was in response to HCEI, and as a result, and is not the foundation or the extent of the HCEI. And today, the U.S. Department of Energy is continuing its efforts to gather and publish information that will be helpful to decision makers and anyone who's interested in Hawaii's local energy resources. The State Energy Office is very interested in understanding this effort and working together to hear from you and to develop accurate and useful information. And there are 5 ways to submit your comments or recommendations for information resources, and Jane will go over that later in this presentation. So when we're talking about the 70% clean energy, I'd just like to point out that it includes electricity, efficiency, as well as renewables. So the 30% of the energy efficiency portfolio standard is actually in statute, is 4,300 gigawatt hours. And the renewable portfolio standard of 40% by 2030 is also in statute. The Hawai'i Clean Energy Initiative also talks about transportation, and the goal there is to reduce petroleum demand of the ground transportation sector by 2030. So I hope this puts it in context, and turn it back to Jade. Thanks.
Okay, when a federal agency is planning an action or an activity, we are required by law to do an environmental review. The statute under which federal agencies do environmental review is called the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. This was passed about 40 years ago. The purpose of this statute was to ensure that federal decisions are informed by environmental review prior to the making of that decision. It's a federal process that mandates public involvement. It also mandates cooperating agency involvement. And I want to describe that a little bit because we have cooperating agencies in this process that we're doing here tonight. A cooperating agency is either another federal or state or other jurisdictional agency that either has jurisdiction by law that is relevant to the activity or has special expertise regarding the activity. We have the State of Hawaii as a cooperating agency. Very clearly special expertise, and we're talking about the State of Hawaii. BOEM, Mark, they're a cooperating agency. They have jurisdiction by law for activities, energy activities in the near offshore environment. So say offshore wind farm development, they would have jurisdiction by law. The Environmental Protection Agency has also signed up as a cooperating agency, and so has the National Park Service. We have invited a number of other agencies to be cooperating agencies. I've had informal discussions with several of them, but I do not have any other formal responses, and so I can't tell you who else, but I do expect we will have some other cooperating agencies whose expertise we can benefit by. Okay, the other thing that is mandated in the law and in the Department of Energy's implementing regulations is something called a Programmatic EIS. This is a special category of environmental impact statement, or EIS. And this is what we do to look at the impacts of very broad agency action, development of a policy or a program, or it can be a planning or feasibility study. And that's what we're doing in this process. The Hawai'i Clean Energy Programmatic Impact Statement is fundamentally a planning or feasibility study to provide information to the Department of Energy in the future as we develop programs, requests for proposals, funding opportunities, this type of thing, so that we can incorporate environmental considerations into the development of these activities, rather than tack it on at the back end of it. This process is not looking at any specific project proposal. We are not analyzing any specific site or location. We are looking across the board in a generic, programmatic sense. Therefore, this PEIS does not in any way eliminate the need for environmental review by every specific project that might later be proposed. How did we get here? Don referred a little bit to this. Back in December of 2010, a notice of intent was published to start an environmental impact, a programmatic environmental impact statement process. That programmatic environmental impact statement focused on wind, a single technology. It focused on Maui County and Oahu and the concept of connecting them by cable. So it was programmatic, but a more limited programmatic. Public scoping meetings were held on the three islands of Maui County and on Oahu in February of 2011. We got a lot of comments, both in the transcripts of the meeting and all of the other messages. A number of strong themes came forward, including such things as the importance of cultural and historical impacts, the importance of threatened and endangered species impacts, visual impacts, socioeconomic concerns. But the two key issues that came forward were why just wind? There are a lot of other clean energy options. We need to look at all of them. And why just 4 islands? Look at the whole state. So the Department of Energy and the State of Hawaii sat down and we decided, based partly on all of these comments and also based on continuing developments that HCEI and the state has in terms of policy and planning considerations, that we needed to rescope this process. And it's been a pretty major rescoping. Our proposal now is, first of all, a solely DOE, a federal action, to prepare guidance, develop guidance that the Department of Energy would use when we make decisions regarding various activities, funding decisions, development of a program, staffing decisions, this type of thing, to support Hawaii in their clean energy issues. Our new scope were looked at over 30 activities and technologies in energy efficiency and renewable energy. We're looking at a new area. We're looking at all 6 of the major Hawaiian islands. This is why we're on the island of Big Island, Hawaii, tonight, and last night, whereas a year ago we were not. We published a new notice of intent on August 10th. I think probably some of you are here because you saw it. And again, we identified in that at this point we are not looking at specific projects, we are not looking at specific locations, and future specific project proposals will have their own environmental analysis. This is just some of the impact areas that we're going to be looking at. The notice of intent listed about 20. But some of the ones that we have already heard from the communities are very important, as I said: cultural and historical resources, threatened and endangered species, water resources, socioeconomics, air quality, visual resources, land use, health and human safety is another one that's come up many times. This is one of the things that we're asking for public input on. What other areas of potential impacts do you want us to look at? Which are the ones that you think are the most important, that we should put the most detail into? Because this is one of the things that's going to drive the analyses that we will do to develop the draft document. These are the 5 clean energy categories that we're using to kind of lump our activities and technologies into to get a handle on discussing them, because this is a lot of information to communicate, and we've got to find a way to kind of classify it and organize it to communicate. So we're looking at energy efficiency, distributed renewables, utility scale renewables, alternative transportation fuels and modes, and electrical transmission and distribution systems. In the energy efficiency category, which is using less energy to perform an action than we have been in the past, these are the types of things that we have identified so far. Looking at buildings, both new construction and retrofitting of existing buildings, energy conservation programs and measures, initiatives and programs such as incentives or rebates for, say, Energy Star appliances, something like that. And then technologies like ground source heat pumps, seawater cooling, and solar water heating. Distributed renewables is a concept of using a renewable energy technology it's a small scale and it's near the point of energy use. This would be solar panels on a residence, or a single wind turbine, moderate-sized single wind turbine on a ranch that provides the power that is needed for that ranch, or an energy source for a business. This doesn't feed into the grid to be sold for lots of other users. It's for that point of use right there. Utility scale renewable energies is when you're using a renewable energy technology to develop a large amount of energy that would feed into the grid and then be distributed to multiple users. Regarding the technologies in this category, I want to apologize. We had a typographical error in the formatting of our Federal Register notice. And it's my fault that I didn't catch it. What happened was when we accepted the last set of editorial comments, it took out an extra space, and the technology geothermal bounced up from the line it was on to the line above, which was biomass, and we said we were looking at biomass geothermal, which I'm not even sure what that would be, but that's not what we're looking at. We are looking at biomass as a technology. We are looking at geothermal as a separate technology, and these others: hydroelectric, ocean energy, photovoltaic systems, wind, solar thermal, ocean thermal energy conversion, municipal solid waste, all as separate renewable energy technologies that are capable of producing energy at a utility scale. We're also looking at alternative fuels, transportation fuels, and modes. That 70% reduction for transportation is a challenging, very challenging goal. We'll be looking at biofuels, at hybrid electric vehicles, at liquefied natural gas, at fully electric vehicles, at hydrogen technologies, and at mass transportation systems. And then we have to look at the electrical transmission and distribution system, because it doesn't help to have renewable energy if it can't feed into the grid and be used where it's needed. We will be looking at on individual island grid systems. We will be looking at the potential of connecting islands, and that would involve both undersea corridors and the sea-land transition sites. But let me emphasize, this is the potential. There is no specific proposal here. And we would be looking at technologies such as smart grid and energy storage capabilities. Our analytical technique, we're going to start by describing each one of those activities and technologies to give everybody an understanding of what goes into the engineering and the operation and the construction to make these things work, because you can't understand impacts if you don't understand the basics of the technology and what's involved in it. We're going to describe potential affected environment on each of the islands. And again, since we don't have specific sites, It's going to be at an island level, but we want to be able to describe some basics of, say, the water resources and the soil resources, and threatened and endangered species habitats, national parks, things that would be extremely or especially susceptible to potential environmental impacts. We will then use this information to analyze the potential impacts, and in NEPA, when we say environmental impacts, we're always including cultural and historical impacts and health and human safety impacts, because we define the environment as everything that is integrated together in an ecosystem, and that does include people. And then we want to identify potential mitigation measures, things that could lessen some of these impacts, something that could be changed in the design or the operation of a technology to lessen or perhaps even eliminate these impacts, and best management practices, or something that could make the potential impacts more acceptable to a community. Because the bottom line is, there isn't anything people do that doesn't have impacts of some sort. Okay? We haven't found anything yet that's impact-free, so we need to understand how best to make them acceptable. Go back just a second. In asking for input and comments, we're looking for input on every one of these. Do we have the right activities and technologies? Is there something we've missed? Are there ones that you want us to focus on that you think are especially important to the state or to the island or to your community? We need help in identifying any specifics in the affected environment on your island, in your community, that might be hard for us to find, but you think is important for us to know. A special recreation area that the locals use that might not be documented somewhere, but is very important to the community. Obviously, cultural resources, very important. Knowledge of the threatened and endangered species, we want that kind of information. We're interested in what impacts you're very concerned about, and we're interested in suggestions for mitigations. What does the community think would help mitigate a certain impact, a visual impact, or an impact to water? Because different communities have different feelings on these things, and it's not for us to dictate to the community. We're trying to help everyone understand what the community would like to see. Okay. Our proposal is to develop guidance that we would use at the Department of Energy when we make decisions to, say, develop a funding program where we're going to put out a request for proposals and ask developers to come in and make proposals. But if we have this information up front, we can build into that program consideration of environmental impacts, requirements for certain mitigation measures or best management practices. These are some of the ways that this guidance could be used. We're seeking comments on this whole scope of this programmatic environmental impact statement. And these are the things that I've already discussed that we're looking for input on. Okay, here are various ways to comment. This is the scoping period. It was initiated by the Notice of Intent on August 10th. The scoping period is 60 days long. It will end on October 9th. Now, the Department of Energy always takes late comments to the extent practicable. We appreciate it if you make that date, but we don't just throw things out if they come in after the date. There are several ways to make your comments. There's an email address. You can go to the PEIS website, and there's a button. Is that, Joe? What's on a website? What's the technical word? It's a button? A button. Thank you. I don't do websites very much. Notice. You can send a fax. You can send U.S. mail. You can make a comment tonight by coming up here and speaking in front of the group, and the court reporter will transcribe it. That will be in the comment part. That's not going to be transcribed, the questions and answers, but the comment part. You also tonight can get a comment form and do it in writing if you would prefer, because a lot of people don't like to get up and speak in front of a group. And we had earlier this evening a court reporter if someone wanted to do a one-on-one. Now, at the end of this comment period, we will take all of these scoping comments and we'll go through the same exercise we did a year ago. We'll review them and say, what have we learned that might lead us to change what we are planning as the scope of our exercise? Once we have evaluated all of these comments and finalized the scope of the document, we will proceed with the analyses and with developing the document, writing these different sections and coming up with a draft. We will publish that draft, make it available to the public. We're estimating about mid to late 2013. There will be a notice of availability, another notice published in the Federal Register. Anyone who has signed up to be on our mailing list will get an email or a notice, a postcard saying this draft document is now available and the comment period on the draft has begun. And at that time, we will be looking for specific comments on that draft document. First and foremost, are there inaccuracies? But also, did we miss something? Was there an area that you don't think is clearly expressed? It needs to be better written because no one can follow it. There wasn't enough information here. That type of comment on the draft. At the end of that comment period, those comments on the draft, will be collected into what we call a comment response document. Every issue raised in those comments will be responded to in the comment response document, and that becomes an integral part of our final document. We will also revise the document as appropriate according to the comments that we have received. And when that's done, and that is not usually a quick process, but when that's done, we will publish the final programmatic environmental impact statement. And that will be a publicly available document that the Department of Energy will base its decision on as to whether to move forward with guidance or not, but also is available for other federal agencies, for the state, for developers, and for any member of the community to use as a reference, should they wish to do so. It's an informational resource. The Department of Energy will review the input and reach its decision whether to move forward with the development of guidance or not. That decision would be published in what we call a record of decision in the Federal Register, and it can be no sooner than 30 days after the final is distributed. It's often a little longer than 30 days because it is the federal government we're talking about here making a decision and writing a document. But the law says no sooner than 30 days. So that's what the process is. Those are the two times, now in scoping and on the draft. When we come out, we will come back at the draft to all the islands, have a series of meetings, and also through all of these mechanisms again, take your comments. Mahalo for your attention, and we will move to the question of, Dawn, I think you have an introduction.
Yes. Again, thank you. I did want to, we're going to go into the question and answer, but I did want to recognize Mayor Billy Quinoy for coming to the meeting tonight. Mahalo. Okay. I really would hope we want to be very courteous and respectful to each other. So we're going to move into the question and answer period. I have got 55 people who want to make a comment. And that's really the formal part of this meeting, and that's really what's important. But we want to be real consistent with all the other meetings that we've had, and we've included a question and answer. But again, I want to remind you that the questions and answers really should be about process, the Programmatic EIS process, and any questions regarding the presentations that were either made by Jane or by Maria. Because the real important part is we want to hear what you have to say. So we're going to, if your question is really a comment, the panel is going to let you know it probably is a good idea that you put that on the record so we can consider that. Again, we've got 55 people, and I want to make sure that we are giving everybody an opportunity to speak. speak tonight, so. Okay, Joe has just reminded me, if any of you have to leave early or if you don't feel comfortable coming up, there's a court reporter in the back who can take your comment right now, and that will be part of the formal record. Okay, with that being said, if anybody would like to ask a question, please come up. Okay, we're going to take the gentleman first, and then the person, and then the woman behind. Okay, you'll be number 4. Oh, come on.
Does the EIS cover energy use by ships and airplanes? And if it doesn't cover ships and airplanes, why not?
Actually, could you make that comment on the record for us to consider in scoping? I'm sitting here looking at my team and I'm not quite sure how to answer, but that's something that would go into scoping. That's a scoping comment. And that's an example of what we want on the record for us to go back and say, okay, did we miss something here? Thank you, that was excellent.
If you want, you can face the audience as well.
Okay, well, actually, my question is for you guys. Isn't it premature to do this? Are you guys listening? Isn't it premature to do the EIS process before the IRP process is completed?
The EIS process is a Department of Energy federal process. The IRP process is an independent process and is not related. I would hope that what we do when we're done is of use to other organizations that are doing energy-related processes, but the only organization that is assured to use this is the Department of Energy, and the Department of Energy is not involved in the IRP process.
Next question.
My question is very similar to what was just asked, which is, I think it's, anyway, thank you for doing this scoping, because I think it's so important. My question is, there are projects and processes that are happening, organizations that are being created, I think, for example, that corporate, anyway. And so, you're doing this, which is great, and I think it will have a big impact, but are those projects in any way put on hold, or encouraged to be put on hold until this environmental impact statement is completed?
Again, this process directly affects only Department of Energy activities. Should the state or some other organization wish to use it, that would be their choice. The Department of Energy doesn't tell the state what to do. That certainly would, be inappropriate. That's up to the state, the citizens of the state of Hawaii, to make their decisions. But the fact is, because it is a planning and feasibility study, it doesn't stop anything else from happening. It's informational.
We have that gentleman. Would you like to ask a question? And if you have a question, please come on up, and you'll be next in line.
So I understand what you just said. This has no teeth. The only thing maybe this process might be great for is when we sue the state and sue everybody that's involved. With your recommendations, when they come through, then we'll have to use those in litigation, because if you have no teeth, this community is going to find teeth. Thank you.
Does anybody else want to ask a question? There's a woman there. Oh, why don't you ask?
Thank you. This is a question. I'd like to hear some elaboration on what drives this process. It's not obvious to me why 70%, quote, clean energy is a desirable objective. And I'd like to hear something about how that was arrived at. And I'd also like to hear something about why this process and the energy systems it contemplates are more desirable than simply letting excuse me, the Public Utility Commission and the free market determine what the energy supply system will look like.
From the point of view of the Department of Energy, we're supporting the state of Hawaii. So I'm going to ask Maria to deal with this.
Thank you. The 70% clean energy concept. Okay, is this better? Okay, thanks. The 70% clean energy was arose from the question of, okay, if we are only 10% renewable and we're going to have, 10% energy efficiency and the other 80% of our energy needs are going to be met by oil, is that something that we really want to continue? Or does it make sense to at least ask if it could be flipped? And so the 70% clean energy conceptually started with the idea, well, what if we flip it around and we try to develop our own renewable resources as well as our vast reserve of efficiency? And so that's where that came from, and it is not a limit. Some people say, well, 100%, of course. So that's, it was really from the question of how can we get to clean energy, and knowing that 100% was probably not a good thing to start from the very beginning, but if we at least flipped it, could we do it? And the efficiency piece of this is extremely important, as well as the renewables, and the devil's in the details. So by looking at the environmental questions from a programmatic standpoint, and also the IRP process, we'll be looking at it from a technical point of view, and with the public input, I think we'll have a much better informed basis for decisions going forward. The second part, why not let the PUC and the energy developers work on it? They definitely are involved with the other parts of the process. But
I believe the second question relates to why not let the free market and the PUC choose future energy projects. And in fact, that will happen. This PEIS process is not selecting future projects for the state of Hawaii or for the PUC. So this is providing environmental guidance, but it is not a document that either regulates or prescribes or excludes any projects or technologies. So that is still the purview of the state to do that.
Now, I'm going to let the young woman ask the question. She was waiting. Oh, you go.
My question is very simple. How honest will this PEIS be? I've attended many meetings that conducted EIS previously, whether it was conducted by consultants, whether it was conducted by state, whether it was conducted by county or federal. They all lie. They all use word mitigating circumstances. They group about 10, 20 concerns all together and say, there's no mitigating circumstance. Full of lies. When will an honest concern of individuals be answered in an EIS? I'm not asking, I'm demanding that the federal government do this.
I have always done my job to the best of my ability with integrity. My specialty is as a proponent of the integrity of the NEPA process. I work for various organizations in the Department of Energy when they need NEPA support, but I'm not a proponent or an advocate of what any of these programs are doing. So my loyalty professionally is to this process, and that includes representing the public's input as honestly as I can.
Three questions on the process. What is the total budget for this process, including the state, federal, the consultants, and the et cetera? I didn't hear the date that the final EIS will be issued. There are things going on in this island right now that are going to proceed and affect this process, meaning changes in generation, additions in generation in the pipeline after the process starts. How are you going to handle those? Mahalo.
Let me do the second question first. Date of final. What I told you was my estimated date of the draft, and that's an estimate because we don't have the scoping comments. And if we have to rescope, that will dramatically change that schedule. So that's tentative based on the scoping comments. Once we have the scoping comments, have finalized the scope, and can put in place a solid schedule for the draft, I will have a tentative schedule for the final. But once again, the absolute schedule for the final is going to depend on the public comments we get. There's a huge difference in time and resources between answering 5,000 questions and 20,000 questions, and I've worked in processes with at least that range, if not greater. So I'm hoping that we can wrap this up in 18 to 24 months. That is absolutely our goal and intent. But I won't even for my management make a hard and fast commitment because I have these open areas of public input that can have a huge impact on what we're doing. Total budget right now, 1.7 to 2 million, 2 million? 2 million.
That includes only state, federal.
Yeah. Not my salary. For the EIS itself.
And the question on generation average after the.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, of course. Continuing, we will do our best to monitor continuing changes in technology and in activities and to update between the draft and the final so that the final is representative of what has occurred in that time period.
I'm going to let the young woman in the purple blouse, because she's been waiting very patiently.
Aloha. I have a very direct, specific question, and I would ask for a very direct, specific answer. I'm here to ask specifically about the geothermal project, which I think we're all here about, and it has not really been covered. And my question is, and it's also related to your comment of why just wind power? My question is, why is there one energy company on this island that was able to wipe out destroy wind turbines on the west side, stop Kohala from powering using wind energy? In South Point, there are wind turbines that don't even work. And I see a lot of potential for solar panels on the west side as well. So my question is, why would a dangerous project be even considered before this very big problem of shutting down any kind of progress that is clearly not dangerous?
The comment, please make that on the record. What I will respond to now is the part that relates to the process, which is what we're talking about. And we're not analyzing specific projects in this document, but we will be looking at all of those technologies in a broad programmatic sense on this island and all the other islands. I can't. That is not the purview of this question and answer session, and we need to get, if we're done with questions on this process and this presentation, we need to move to the part where people get their comments on the record so that they can affect the document.
I just wanted to try to clarify that we are not trying to avoid the question. We have no responsibility or role in making those types of decisions for the island of Hawaii in terms of wind or geothermal. This is looking at future opportunities and environmental impacts. So we've had no prior role and have no actual future role in deciding what specific projects are used by HELCO or any other utility.
I'm gonna take my order. There's a young woman here, and then Mayor.
In your presentation about the timeline, you mentioned energy self-sufficiency. And I wonder about island self-sufficiency. Have you guys thought about that? Not wiring our power to Oahu?
Please make that as a comment, but I can tell you if we hadn't thought about it before we started these scoping meetings, we are certainly thinking about it now. And we have thought about it.
I have Mayor Pinoy.
Hey you guys, hello. I just wanted to share with the Department of Energy, with all of you here, what the county's testimony has written. You know that Hawaii Island, the county of Hawaii, led the way in renewable energy on our island. The county of Hawaii itself has photovoltaic, our police fire stations. It saves us over $1 million a year. We have an innovative 250 kilowatt system, West Hawaii Civic, as well as in Hilo. We also put in a 2.3 megawatt wind farm to power our water needs in North Hawaii. We are not for, we want to make a point that the County of Hawaii has submitted written testimony. You guys showed everybody aloha respect too. Just ask the same thing. Never shouted anybody down or disrespected anybody here. We're one island, one community. You guys, not at one time has my administration or anybody ever disrespected somebody's opportunity to speak. So our point is that our goal is not just renewable energy. Yes, we need self-reliance and energy self-sufficiency. Our goal is also cheaper renewable energy, because 40 cents to 42 cents a kilowatt energy is not acceptable for the quality of life. So our comment, my question is that we'd ask the Department of Energy to help us, the County of Hawaii, pursue not just renewable energy because we sit in the middle of the Pacific, but to allow us to find ways to work together, Department of Energy, to state with us in the county and the community, to find ways to have affordable, cheaper renewable energy. That's our request to all of you. That should be our goal. Our quality of life depends on it here. And that's what we ask of all of you at the Department of Energy. The County of Hawaii will continue to do its part in its operations to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, on non-renewable sources. But we want to ask your help and your support to help us expand our renewable energy source, but find cheaper, affordable renewable energy for our children and the future of Hawaii Island. Mahalo.
You know what? I'm really going to ask all of you to be really respectful and courteous to one another. If we want to get through this, and we want to hear all of you, that I really ask you to treat each other as you would want them to treat you. So I'm going to ask you, if you may have your own, you may object to what someone says, but again, I would just ask that you be courteous and respectful to each other. Okay? No. And that was acknowledged as such. The DOE asked him to make that as a comment. So please, I've got a woman here. Now remember, we're asking questions because we want to give you an opportunity, but we need to, and I know this you're not going to be happy with this, but we need to leave here by 9 o'clock. I've got 55 people who want to make a comment. So I'm really going to ask you, when you come up to make a question, really think, is it a question or is it a comment? Because if it's a comment, you are taking time from the comment. Okay? You have a question?
In light of what our mayor just said, I guess a big question that comes up over and over, because I've looked at the website and I've looked at this, and it's been stewing with me for a while, why we are even considering the possibility of an underground cable when we are trying to get prices down. All I've heard from this under cable possibility is that it's going to be between 10 and 20 billion just for the cable alone. And it makes no sense to me that why are we even considering that in clean energy? Number two, why is geothermal up there with clean energy? I live in Lower Puna. It is not clean. It is not safe. There are people sick. I just want to acknowledge by our dear mayor who has vetoed our county council. However, I want to know why it's here, because you all should know better. Places have been closed down in Germany, in Switzerland, and California, and here we are in a lava zone. One, I want to know why it's up there. I want to know why it's on the website. Yes, that's my big burning question.
In regards, including the cable as a potential, we know it's been proposed. We are not advocating, we are not passing judgment, but we would be negligent to not look at potential environmental impacts of something that we know is proposed and being considered. And the same goes for geothermal.
And that's an excellent comment. I hope you put that on the record. Because I want to remind everybody, these questions are not part of the formal record. Okay, so the next question. Please think, is it a question or a comment?
This is a very big task that you have. I have two questions that I don't understand yet that are included in your process. One, is there a way of looking for technological sustainability? There's a lot of change going on in our world right now, and this is like a crossroads of energy. Where are we going in the future? Big changes are going to be happening while you're even writing this report. Is there a part of your process that looks at technological sustainability of them? And the second one I have is, does your process include, you see how important this is for people, does your process include looking at an objective analysis of the economic and political history that got for us, Big Island, or for all of the state of Hawaii to the point where they are at? In other words, it's not just the technical issues that are here. There's a political past, there's a technological past, there's an economic past, there's a business and government, all those things. Does your process include a history and analysis of how we got to where we are now?
Those are both excellent questions. As far as the technological sustainability, our stated goal is guidance that would help Hawaii meet the goal of 70% clean energy by 2030. That puts a little bit of a control on the scope by saying if it's not likely to be commercially feasible in a time period that would allow it to contribute to meeting those goals, we won't look at it in great detail. We would perhaps discuss it, but say this is still at an R&D level. It's not really expected to come online at a commercial level that could be used to penetrate the market for 2 decades. Therefore, it's not in the time frame that we're looking at. But we don't foresee the future. So we'll use information from the National Renewable Energy Lab, from the other national labs like Lawrence Berkeley or Lawrence Livermore, or anyone who's got research material that can give us an insight into this. But always when you're looking to the future, it's an educated guess. For the economic history aspect of it, make that as a comment on the record, please. It seems to me that that's scope of the affected environment.
If pentane is known to be so highly toxic and explosive, and 40 gallons a day are disappearing for each well that is being drilled and will be drilled, how much pentane do you think Puna can absorb and still you want to call this clean? Where is all this stuff going? Or do you not want to think about that?
Either to the court reporter or as a written comment. That's not something we're in a position to answer now at the beginning of the process.
You can let me know later. You can go find out.
Please make it on the record.
All right.
Aloha, this is, I think, my third meeting I've come to, and I'm still kind of not clear on the process. Sorry. So my question, I understand that the Programmatic EIS is not project specific, but there are already individual projects in the works and going through. So will the federal government be providing funds or resources to these individual projects before the final Programmatic EIS is complete?
To back up a spec, this process, this programmatic process, can only be forward-looking. So if there are projects already ongoing or in development, okay, thank you. I hear that you do not hear me. I will try to speak more clearly. Is that any better? Yes. Excellent. Okay, in terms of, would this process interrupt or fund existing projects? This process will not affect existing projects that are already ongoing or under development. This project can only, this process, this programmatic assessment can only provide environmental information and guidance for future projects. And if a project is currently ongoing and has federal involvement or federal nexus, then a separate NEPA process NEPA review will have to take place for that project. So no project with federal involvement will occur or be completed without that National Environmental Policy Act process review.
I'm going to ask the group, we do have to leave by 9 o'clock. I've got at least 55 people that want to make a comment. The questions are not part of the record. Therefore, I want to ask the group here, would you consider that if at this point in time that we take the comments now that are going to be part of the record, if there is time after we finish all the comments, then we'll take questions. Do you feel okay doing that? Okay, there's a sign-up sheet in the back, so please make sure you sign up. No, and I really appreciate everybody's cooperation on that. Part of this is I want to make sure the process you all feel comfortable with, but the comments are the most important. So, thank you. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. We're gonna take a 5-minute break, but everybody sit down. We're gonna let the court reporter come up to the front. She's gonna be here and take your comments. We have a really big group. We've got a lot of people who want to speak. So what I'd like to do is ask you to come up to the front, to the mic. I really want one person to speak at a time, because the court reporter can only take one person. Please state your name for the record. Look at her in the audience when you speak, and she's going to try to take everybody's comments down accurately. If you have a written statement and you want to give that, that's fine too. That can accurately depict your comment. We've got, again, at least 55 and possibly more. So I am going to ask all of you to bear with us. but we're gonna limit you to no more than 3 minutes. I am going to walk very closely up to you at 1 minute, and that's gonna be an indication that you're gonna have to summarize. And I am sorry, but I'm going to close you at 3 minutes, okay? Okay, the court reporter is coming up, so if you want to take a bathroom break or you want to stretch your legs, we're going to start very quickly. And I'm going to list down the first 3 people and what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the 3 names who are next. And if you can begin to come up. Is the mayor here? Okay, we've got Richard Bedleman. Oh, Richard was here very early. And then we're going to take Elaine Monroe, and then we're going to take Henry Curtis. So if you can begin to come up, I really greatly appreciate everybody's cooperation. Thank you.